I am about to show you why the beta blockers and harsh anti-seizure medications your neurologist casually prescribes to hide your shaking hands are actually chemically suffocating your brainstem, accelerating the destruction of your cerebellum, and causing the exact neurodegenerative decline they claim to be treating, and how aggressively removing the mechanical tourniquets around your neck and resuscitating your mitochondrial engines is the only biological way to stop the tremor at its root. We are dealing with a catastrophic medical culture that paralyzes your nervous system to hide a symptom, while your brain tissue is literally crying out for oxygen and energy. Stay with me. For the next 30 minutes, we are going to completely dismantle everything the medical establishment has told you about essential tremors, nerve aging, and why your hands shake more after 60. We are going to dive incredibly deep into the hardcore, terrifying mechanics of cerebellar ischemia, the brutal reality of lipid peroxidation inside your myelin sheaths, and the biochemical catastrophe of why your doctor's obsession with numbing your nervous system is putting your brain in a dehydrating biological straitjacket. By the end of this masterclass, you will understand the exact physics of why your hands are stuttering, and you will have the aggressive, unyielding biological tools to repolarize your nerves and reclaim the rock-solid steadiness of your youth. Comment below if you are terrified to hold a cup of hot coffee in public, or if you feel a deep, burning shame every time you try to sign a check and your pen wildly stutters across the paper. Type Tremor if you want the exact aggressive biological protocol to fix the root cause instead of suffering through another useless brain-fogging prescription. Let me tell you about Barbara. Barbara was 69 years old, an incredible former concert pianist, and she came into my clinic completely devastated. Over the past 3 years, she had developed a severe bilateral hand tremor. It started as a tiny flutter when she held a fork, but it had progressed to a violent shake every time she tried to perform a deliberate action. Her neurologist diagnosed her with essential tremor, which is basically medical code for "you shake and we have no idea why." He prescribed her a massive dose of propranolol, a harsh beta blocker originally designed for high blood pressure. Barbara took the drug, and yes, the shaking dulled slightly, but the side effects were a biological nightmare. She became overwhelmingly dizzy when she stood up. Her hands and feet turned freezing cold. She developed a profound, suffocating brain fog that made her forget conversations mid-sentence, and she was so chronically exhausted she could barely get out of bed. When she complained, her neurologist shrugged and offered to switch her to primidone, a hardcore anticonvulsant barbiturate. Barbara was being gaslit by a medical system that treats the human nervous system like a broken dashboard light. The doctor was using a chemical hammer to smash the warning light, completely ignoring the engine fire under the hood. When I analyzed Barbara's neurovascular physics and cellular chemistry, I didn't see an incurable disease. I saw a cerebellum that was experiencing profound cellular starvation. I saw microscopic blood vessels choked off by mechanical fascial restriction and mitochondrial engines completely paralyzed by oxidative rust. We immediately and safely tapered her off the chemical straitjacket of the beta blocker. We initiated an aggressive mechanical release of the vascular choke points in her cervical spine. We flooded her brain with highly specific lipid-soluble antioxidants and mitochondrial spark plugs. Within 6 weeks, the brain fog evaporated, the color and warmth returned to her fingers, and most importantly, she sat down at my desk, picked up a pen, and wrote her name with the razor-sharp, rock-solid precision of a 30-year-old. She wasn't decaying. Her nervous system was starving, and her doctor was chemically suffocating it. To understand why Barbara was shaking and why your hands feel like they are vibrating out of your control, we have to travel deep inside the base of your skull and look at the brutal physics of your cerebellum and your basal ganglia. Your brain is not just a computer, it is a highly demanding electrical generator. When you decide to pick up a glass of water, your motor cortex sends the command, but that command is raw and unrefined. It has to be processed, smoothed out, and calibrated by your cerebellum and your basal ganglia. Think of the cerebellum as the master conductor of your neurological orchestra. To perform this incredibly complex smoothing operation, the cerebellum relies on massive, highly complex cells called Purkinje cells. Purkinje cells are the largest and most metabolically demanding neurons in your entire body. They require a massive, uninterrupted, roaring tsunami of oxygen and ATP cellular energy just to function. When these cells are perfectly fueled, your movement is like liquid silk. But what happens after decades of chronic inflammation, poor posture, and metabolic decay? The fuel supply is choked off, and when a Purkinje cell drops into a state of cellular starvation, it doesn't just die immediately, it stutters. The electrical signal it sends down your spinal cord to your hands becomes jagged, broken, and chaotic. That stutter, that chaotic electrical misfire, is exactly what you see as a hand tremor. The tremor is not the disease. The tremor is the physical manifestation of a starving Purkinje cell screaming for energy. Now we must look at exactly how the medical establishment treats this biological cry for help and why it is a catastrophic failure of medical physics. The first line of defense is a beta blocker like propranolol. Your doctor tells you this will calm your nerves. What they do not tell you is the mechanism of action. Beta blockers violently block the epinephrine and norepinephrine receptors on your heart and in your blood vessels. They artificially force your heart to beat slower and weaker. Why is this a disaster? Because your cerebellum is located at the very back and base of your brain. It is fed exclusively by the vertebral arteries, two tiny, delicate blood vessels that thread their way up through the bony loops of your neck vertebrae. To push heavy, oxygenated blood up through those tiny pipes and against gravity into the back of your brain, your heart needs kinetic hydrostatic pressure. When you take a beta blocker, you slash your cardiac output. You drop the water pressure in the basement. As a result, the blood simply does not have the kinetic force to fully perfuse the high-demand Purkinje cells in the penthouse of your skull. Yes, the beta blocker might dull the peripheral adrenaline that exacerbates the shake, but it is doing so by inducing chronic global hypoperfusion of your brain. You are trading a tremor for a slow, chemical asphyxiation of your cognitive tissue. This is why patients on high-dose beta blockers develop devastating fatigue, memory loss, and depression. You are freezing the engine to stop the rattling. The second line of defense is the anticonvulsant. Drugs like primidone or gabapentin. These are chemical lobotomies. They do not fix the energy deficit in the cell. They simply alter the ion channels in the brain to depress the entire central nervous system. They smother the electrical grid. They turn you into a sedated zombie, while the underlying decay of your neurological tissue continues completely unabated. We must stop drugging the symptom and address the three biological monsters actually causing your hands to shake: the mechanical tourniquet, lipid peroxidation, and mitochondrial collapse. Let's begin with the mechanical tourniquet. I mentioned the vertebral arteries that feed your cerebellum. These arteries do not exist in a vacuum. They are wrapped in a dense web of myofascial tissue, specifically the suboccipital muscles at the very base of your skull. If you have spent the last 40 years staring down at desks, hunching over steering wheels, or looking down at a smartphone, this fascial tissue undergoes a violent structural change. It becomes glued together with sticky fibrin proteins. It shrinks, hardens, and turns into biological concrete. This concrete fascia physically clamps down on the vertebral arteries. It creates a mechanical tourniquet around the blood supply to your cerebellum. No chemical pill on earth can fix a mechanical restriction. Your brain is literally being strangled by your own neck muscles. The oxygen cannot get in, and the acidic metabolic waste cannot get out. Next is the nightmare of lipid peroxidation. The wires that run from your brain down your arms to your hands are called peripheral nerves. To conduct electricity smoothly, these wires are insulated with a fatty coating called the myelin sheath. Your brain and your nerves are composed primarily of highly vulnerable fats, including DHA. When your blood sugar spikes, or when you are exposed to environmental toxins, you create massive amounts of free radicals. Because your nerves are bathed in fat, these free radicals attack the myelin sheath, causing the fat to literally go rancid and rust. This is lipid peroxidation. It physically strips the insulation off your nerve wires. What happens when two exposed electrical wires touch? They short circuit. They spark. That sparking is the violent trembling in your fingers when you try to hold a spoon. Finally, we have mitochondrial collapse. Inside your massive Purkinje cells and your basal ganglia, you have millions of mitochondria, the microscopic energy factories that produce ATP. As you age, and especially if you have ever been prescribed a statin drug for your cholesterol, your mitochondria become paralyzed. Statins aggressively deplete coenzyme Q10, the exact biological spark plug required for the mitochondria to fire. Without CoQ10, the factories shut down. The Purkinje cell drops into a massive energy deficit. It cannot maintain the electrical gradient required to smooth out your movements. The coordination fails. We are not going to paralyze your heart with beta blockers. We are not going to sedate your brain with anticonvulsants. We are going to rip off the mechanical tourniquet, aggressively rebuild the myelin insulation, and violently restart the mitochondrial engines in your cerebellum. Here is the exact, unyielding, hardcore biological masterclass protocol to stop the tremor and rescue your nervous system. Step 1. The suboccipital fascial decompression. We must immediately remove the mechanical tourniquet choking off the blood supply to your brainstem. You cannot do this with passive stretching. You must mechanically break the fibrin crosslinks at the base of your skull. You will use a specialized, dense suboccipital release tool, or 2 firm lacrosse balls taped together. You will lie flat on the floor, place the tool exactly at the base of your skull where the neck meets the bone, and allow the heavy 10-pound weight of your head to sink into the pressure for 5 uninterrupted minutes every single day. Do not roll, just sink. This sustained, intense mechanical pressure physically melts the hardened fascia, releasing the vice grip on your vertebral arteries. You will literally feel a rush of warmth and oxygen flooding into the back of your brain as the pipes finally open. Step 2. The neuro-electrical repolarization. When your hands are shaking, the electrical charge across your nerve membranes is completely chaotic. You are severely deficient in the master relaxation mineral, but you cannot use standard, cheap magnesium like magnesium oxide, which just causes diarrhea and never reaches the brain. You must strictly deploy magnesium L-threonate. This is a highly advanced, specialized form of magnesium that was molecularly designed specifically to cross the blood-brain barrier. It physically enters the cerebrospinal fluid and forcefully drives magnesium directly into the starving synapses of your cerebellum, instantly calming the chaotic electrical misfires and stabilizing the nerve membrane. You will take this 1 hour before bed. Step 3. The lipid-soluble rust destroyer. We must immediately halt the lipid peroxidation that is rotting the myelin sheath of your nerves. Standard vitamin C will not work here because it is water-soluble and cannot protect the deep fatty tissues of the brain. You must deploy astaxanthin, nature's most violent, aggressive lipid-soluble antioxidant. Astaxanthin is uniquely shaped to span the entire cell membrane. It physically embeds itself into the fatty myelin sheath and acts as a biological shield, absorbing the free radicals and stopping the electrical short-circuiting in your peripheral nerves. You need a minimum of 12 milligrams daily, taken with a high-quality fat for maximum absorption. Step 4. The Purkinje cell ignition matrix. We must restart the dead mitochondrial engines in your cerebellum. You must flood your system with a massive dose of ubiquinol. Do not buy standard CoQ10 or ubiquinone because your aging liver cannot convert it effectively. Ubiquinol is the biologically active electron-donating form. It bypasses the liver, enters the brain, and directly inserts itself into the mitochondrial electron transport chain. Pair this with 20 milligrams of PQQ, pyrroloquinoline quinone. PQQ is a biological miracle. It triggers mitochondrial biogenesis, meaning it forces your brain cells to literally grow brand new, highly efficient energy factories to replace the ones that have died. We are completely rebuilding the power grid of your coordination center. Step 5. The paradoxical B6 correction. This is a critical failure of the supplement industry. Many seniors take cheap B-complex vitamins for nerve health. These cheap vitamins contain pyridoxine hydrochloride, the synthetic form of vitamin B6. In large doses, pyridoxine is actually highly neurotoxic. It competitively blocks the active form of B6 in your blood, literally causing the exact nerve damage and tremors you are trying to prevent. You must immediately throw away any cheap multivitamins. If you take B6, it must strictly be in the form of P5P, pyridoxal 5-phosphate. This is the biologically active coenzyme form that safely and aggressively repairs nerve damage without building up to toxic levels in the blood. Your shaking hands are not just a cute, unavoidable quirk of getting older. They are a blaring, terrifying biological alarm that your central nervous system is trapped in a mechanical tourniquet, drowning in oxidative rust, and screaming for cellular energy. Stop accepting the medical gaslighting, stop chemically suffocating your heart, and lobotomizing your brain just to mask the symptom. Rip off the biological straitjacket, decompress the vascular choke points, rebuild the myelin sheath, fire up the mitochondrial engines. Give your brain the massive tsunami of oxygen and power it is begging for, and reclaim the rock-solid steadiness of your life. I'm Dr. Amelia Carter. I'll see you in the next video.